Grassroots organizing is the foundation of political success. But when the foundation cracks, progress falters. Meanwhile, at the federal level, another battle is brewing over a tax proposal that could fundamentally reshape who shoulders the burden in America. Enter the FairTax Act. There's a saying, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The FairTax Act is a bill that promises to simplify taxes, abolish the IRS, and replace it all with a single national sales tax. On the surface, it sounds like a dream come true for taxpayers frustrated with the complexities of the current system. But let's take a closer look. This proposal comes at a pivotal moment. After decades of underfunding, the IRS is finally making progress in enforcing tax laws on the wealthy, collecting over $1.3 billion last year from high-income non-filers. This is money that should have been used for funding our schools, infrastructure, and healthcare. Money the richest among us have long avoided paying. But just as the IRS begins holding these individuals accountable, the FairTax Act offers to eliminate the agency altogether. Supporters of the FairTax Act claim it's about fairness and simplicity. But who really benefits from such sweeping change? By replacing the federal income and payroll taxes with a 23% national sales tax, this proposal shifts the burden to everyday consumers, leaving those with the most wealth relatively unscathed. So is this truly about fairness, or is it a strategic move to protect billionaires and corporate interests while shifting the cost to you? Let's break it down. For decades, the IRS has operated under severe financial strain. Between 2010 and 2021, its budget was slashed by 20%, leading to a 35% reduction in revenue agents and a dramatic drop in audit rates for high-income earners. During this same period, tax filings from individuals earning over $500,000 increased by 70%, creating a system where the wealthiest Americans were far less likely to be audited. These cuts were not accidental. They were the result of a deliberate effort by the wealthy and their allies to weaken the agency's ability to enforce tax laws. This underfunding hurt not just the IRS, but the public as well. Billions of dollars in uncollected taxes were effectively lost. High-income earners benefited from a system that allowed them to evade taxes with little fear of consequences. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 aimed to reverse this trend, allocating $80 billion to modernize the IRS and strengthen its enforcement capabilities. The results were immediate. By 2024, the agency collected over $1.3 billion from high-income filers, targeting approximately 125,000 wealthy individuals who had previously avoided filing. This was a significant step toward holding the wealthiest accountable and recapturing funds that rightfully belonged to the public. However, progress was met with resistance. In 2023, a debt ceiling deal stripped $1.4 billion from the IRS's budget, with an additional $20 billion set to be diverted over the next 2 years. These cuts jeopardize the agency's ability to sustain its enforcement efforts, creating a precarious situation where gains in accountability could be quickly undone. The timing of the FairTax Act is also notable. As the IRS begins clawing back revenue from the wealthy tax dodgers, this bill proposes dismantling the agency entirely and replacing federal income taxes with a consumption-based model. It's framed as reform, but the consequences for accountability and fairness are clear. Eliminating the IRS would erase the progress made in enforcing tax laws on the wealthiest Americans, shifting the burden once again onto those least able to bear it. The FairTax Act proposes replacing federal income, payroll, estate, and gift taxes with a 23% national sales tax, eliminating the IRS and shifting tax collection to the states. Advocates claim it simplifies taxation and promotes savings, but its implications are far more complex. A key feature is the prebate, a monthly rebate to offset taxes on essential goods for low-income households. However, This does little to mitigate the regressive nature of a sales tax, which disproportionately impacts lower and middle income families. These households spend more of their income on goods and services, while higher earners save and invest more and face lighter tax burdens as a result. The FairTax Act shifts the burden from the wealthy to everyday consumers by replacing income taxes with a consumption model. This structural change aligns with a history of policies favoring high-income earners under the guise of fairness. At a time when IRS enforcement gains are holding wealthy tax evaders accountable, the FairTax Act would remove these mechanisms, placing a heavier strain on working and middle-class Americans. The FairTax Act represents more than a shift in tax policy. It's a fundamental reshaping of how federal revenue is generated and who shoulders the burden. By eliminating income taxes and replacing them with a consumption-based system, the Act risks destabilizing public funding while exacerbating economic inequality. Shifting tax collection to states introduces risks of uneven enforcement and revenue shortfalls, particularly in regions with weaker administrative capacity. This inconsistency could increase tax evasion, leaving public services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure underfunded. Vulnerable populations, those most reliant on public programs, would bear the brunt of these consequences, amplifying existing disparities. The Act's regressive structure also entrenches wealth inequality. By reducing the tax obligations of the wealthy and placing a larger burden on average Americans, it consolidates power and resources at the top. Beyond its immediate economic impact, the FairTax Act undermines public trust in equitable governance. It reframes accountability measures, such as IRS enforcement, as unnecessary overreach, while shifting focus away from the systemic benefits of progressive taxation. This erosion of trust risks further polarizing, making meaningful reform increasingly difficult. The FairTax Act is not just a policy change, it's a political statement. It prioritizes the interests of the wealthiest over the needs of the majority, threatening the stability of public services and the principles of economic equity. At its core, the Act raises critical questions about whose interests are truly being served under the guise of reform. That's all for today on the Bull Moose Network, where we challenge the powerful, amplify the unheard, and question everything. If you found value in this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more people and keep the conversation going. Speaking of, don't forget to leave a comment down below. And if you want to support independent journalism, consider donating through the site thebullmoosenetwork.com. Together, we can keep pushing for a better future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Eyes open, voices loud.